Welcome, everybody. My name is Suresh Srinivasan. I'm the coordinator for the Minnesota Astronomical Society's Beginner Special Interest Group. Today, we're going to have a special presentation by our very own Jerry Jones, observer extraordinaire of the MAS. Jerry is, he's a silver master level observer. He formerly ran our observing group, and he's an amazing speaker. I've said that to him many times. So Jerry's going to talk a little bit today about Astronomical League programs, and these are designed to help people get into astronomy and then develop their skills. And he's going to try to curtail it to the people that are on the call. So we're going to do things a little bit differently this time. Normally, I ask people to put their questions into the chat. Jerry would like you guys to ask questions directly to him via your speaker. So feel free to speak up. Let me just do one last thing before I forget. We're going to jump right into the outdoor observing sessions next Saturday. I want to make sure I mention this. So we'll be at Metcalf Field next Saturday, April 19th at 7 o'clock for our first outdoor observing session. And I'll start sending out communications for that right after this. All right, Jerry, with that, it's all yours.
Thank you, Suresh. So I'm assuming everybody can see me. Is that right? I'm along the side or in the
I can see you. I can see you. I can't see your presentation, but I can see you.
Yeah, I haven't started my presentation yet. So I got a thumbs up from Kevin. So my question here is to you, Suresh, is that when I start my presentation, I should be able to hear people speak, correct?
Can you guys speak up, please? Just to see if Jerry can hear you.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Paul.
Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Paul.
Hello, this is Alan.
It's Phil.
Hey, Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, Phil.
Kevin.
Howdy.
Well,
Hey, so this is good. So I'm going to go ahead and start to share, and we'll see if I can still hear you guys. All right, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
yes.
And you guys can. So I'm going to assume that I'll be able to hear you, so I won't have to go back and forth between this and not sharing, because the part of the whole question of preparing for a season of observing is it has a big difference on just what the level of ability of the observer is. And so I wanted to be able to take questions so that I can really tailor anything that I might be able to offer to the people who are listening. There is just a ton of things we can talk about, but I want to make sure that it's of value. So before we get started, what's the level? What's the ability level? Are you guys all? Would you consider yourself beginners? Would you consider yourself intermediate? Observers? What are we dealing with here? How many of you guys are beginners?
Let's go right through the list. Kevin?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a beginner yet.
Okay.
2 years.
Beginner. And you guys might also want to mention if you have equipment, what kind of equipment you have.
Right. And because we'll talk about that later on as well.
Paul?
Oh, I'm intermediate.
Yep. I would say you're at least intermediate, Paul.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would say so too, Paul. And you have a C8, if I remember.
My main telescope is an 8-inch Meade
Right.
Schmidt Cassegrain.
Yep. I remember seeing that animal. Yep. Okay, so we can unpack some of those things as we go along here. Again, my name is Jerry Jones. I am the Minnesota Astronomical Society's Astronomical League coordinator, and that while that has a number of hats, the hat that I primarily wear is the awards coordinator, and so I have the pleasure of helping observers work through the observing projects that the Astronomical League presents. And so we'll start there. The Astronomical League is an organization that we are involved with because we happen to be members of, if you're a member of the MAS, you're a member of the Astronomical League. It's our parent organization, composed of over 240 local amateur astronomy clubs all over the country. And it has a threefold purpose. It's to foster astronomical education, to assist communication among amateur astronomical societies, and to provide incentives for astronomical observation. And that's kind of where the projects, in my opinion, where the projects land. And they do a pretty good job. The whole issue of how they present observing projects, I think, is pretty good. So this is going to be a relatively short presentation, I think. And it's mostly a who, what, why, when, where, and how conversation, the how being a necessary gear. And we're going to talk about some observing aids. So the first question I want to toss out is who are you, which we've talked a little bit about, but what are your interests? What strikes you? What strikes your curiosity about the night sky? And this is an important question because we will wind up gravitating, observing what we want to observe, and that affects everything. So I know Paul is kind of a deep sky guy. We've met a couple of times at LLCC. The other of you guys, what are you most curious about observing? What do you like to see? What do you like to observe?
I guess I'll start. Nebulae, galaxies. I really enjoy getting into like globular clusters, getting inside of them and trying to resolve them.
And you are, Suresh, you are obviously clearly a very advanced observer.
I've been doing this a long time, Jerry, almost
Yes,
too
you
long.
have. Yes, you have. How about the rest of you guys?
Well, I'm looking at doing some double star measurements this season, and doing that with an imager, and then using Astro Image J to go get the position, angle, and separation,
Sure.
and then provide that data set to the Webb Society.
Oh, tremendous. That's tremendous. Yep. That sounds like
So
fun.
I'd consider myself, I don't know, I guess I'd say advanced.
Mm-hmm. Yep. At least certainly in that direction, for sure. For sure.
I agree.
Have you done any of the Astronomical League projects?
No, I haven't done any of the Astronomical League projects, but I've observed a lot of them. I've observed back in the early 2000s, I did a Messier marathon with the MAS.
Yep.
And bagged 104 of them in the one night.
Nice work.
And so I've done that kind of stuff, and then it's kind of ebbed and flowed. But I've got I use a 16-inch f4.6 Dobsonian.
Yep.
And I have a 14-inch Schmidt Cassegrain with a Hyperstar and with an f7.2 large format reducer and imagers with a 80 millimeter guide scope. And I've got a 10-inch f6 Dob with a curved secondary that I use for planetary things. I've got an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain and a 5-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. And I've got a 6-inch Achromat refractor that I've been bringing to BSIGs recently, and 80 millimeter apochromatic scope. So I can set up 2 imaging rigs simultaneously. I've got a Dwarf 3 that recently arrived.
Oh, nice.
So I could really have 3 imaging rigs running simultaneously if I wanted to.
And so because I'm looking at my screen, I can't see. Is this Alan I'm talking to?
Yeah, this is Alan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thought so. So
I'm
Alan,
also the chair of the Cherry Grove Observatory site for this year.
Yep. And so Alan, obviously you would be considered an advanced observer. And so I've forgotten the other names. You have Kevin on the Zoom, and who else was it?
I'm Fran.
Fran.
Yeah, and I am really a beginner. I've gone on some combined mass and rover trips and observed stuff through other people's scopes. I really enjoy being in dark skies areas and being able to observe, but I mean, I'm basically naked eye or binoculars kind of person. I don't have any equipment except I have something that I've never used that's probably 50 years old that I inherited from my dad, who was something of an amateur astronomer in Texas. But I'm like, I keep track of the kinds of stuff that that people who don't have any equipment can do. I make a point of seeing eclipses and comets and meteor showers and stuff like that. But really, compared to all of these other people, I am a beginner. I look at the stars when I'm in remote places on kayak trips.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Jerry, she spends all her money on kayaks.
yeah. Sounds like it. Sounds like
Like
it.
we spend it on telescopes.
And I'm not sure I've heard from Kevin.
Yeah, I
Kevin,
was
what?
just waiting my turn is all.
Okay.
Yeah. So listening to Alan, I just found out how much of a beginner I really am. But yeah, same as Suresh. I mean, I enjoy looking at different objects. I have not gone out there and done the Messier tour yet. I need to do that. Uh, and like, and also I need to get into a nice dark sky so I can find a lot of these objects.
Right.
I live in the city, so it's pretty hard to see a lot of those.
Yep.
Get
Yep.
out to Edo a few times of the year to use those telescopes. But the best one I have is the Celestron 8-inch, which does okay, but there's a lot of fuzzy objects up there with that. Need something bigger, but
Is that
like a
is that
16-inch,
a Schmidt Cassegrain?
8-inch, yeah.
8-inch
Yeah,
Schmidt?
yeah, Schmidt Cassegrain, yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so anybody else on the call?
Yeah,
All
I'm
right,
on.
we have 10 people.
It-
Go ahead.
So I'm Phil Ramsey. I've been a member, I don't know, 8 years or something like that. I'd probably consider myself a beginning observer, honestly. I started out in South Dakota where the skies are pretty dark, and my mentor was very good, and so I would just see what he could see. You know, he'd kind of
Yeah.
point things out, and I didn't
Yeah.
even have a telescope at the time, and then I bought his, which was an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. And since moving back to the Twin Cities, I was finding I couldn't see nearly as much as I used to be able to see, and kind of gravitated more into astrophotography. And I think that's where most of my interest lies. But, you know, I certainly live vicariously through others, and, you know, people, you know, share views, and, you know, I'm interested in seeing whatever that it is that they pull up. I still have eyepieces. I still haven't given up on it, but I spend most of my time either looking through other people's scopes or photographing stuff.
That's fine.
I know quite a bit about astrophotography. I don't know the sky all that well, to be perfectly honest. Hi, my wife just came in. Hi, I'm on a conference call. Sorry. And yeah, what else? I guess I mostly like looking at deep sky stuff, but my eyesight honestly isn't all that great. So I probably enjoy planet visually more than most, although I really am not interested in doing imaging of planets to speak of. It's just not my bag.
Sure.
So that's enough.
Well, Jerry, you should probably also mention that now there's imaging programs, right, with the Astronomical League that people can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is that it? Anybody else we're missing? 'Cause that was Phil, right? And
Paul
I
got
think we
it.
got a couple more.
yeah, and Paul. Yep.
I can
Okay.
say it.
So
Can I
oh,
say
go
it? Kathy and I, our main field we go to is Metcalf. So
Yep.
and the globular clusters can be easily seen out there with the light pollution. Galaxies are pretty much impossible other than Andromeda. So my joy is just really kind of working the telescope and finding stuff, and
Right.
I have it connected to Sky Safari. So
Nice. That's nice. Well, so most of you guys are probably not going to get much out of what because I was shooting a little more towards ranked beginners, but that's okay. So I'm going to kind of scream through some stuff, and feel free to interrupt me at any point in time, please, and ask a question. And we'll just go for it, because there's gonna be a lot of stuff I'm just gonna breeze over, assuming that you guys already know this stuff.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm attending today is to learn how to help beginners better. So I think, you know, maybe spending the time and doing what you were originally planning is a good thing.
Well, I'm gonna cruise through my slides here since
Okay.
I've got them here, and that's what I've done. But in that situation, again, feel free to ask any question. Okay, so the reason why I asked the question is because what we want to see makes a big difference about who we see them and when. With whom do you want to experience the night sky? If you're a solitary observer, which a few of us are, dark skies, good horizons are the way to go. And luckily, with the MAS, we have a number of pretty decent sites. But it becomes out basically if you want to see stuff, the darker the better. If you like to be with other people, and don't we all, then obviously regional star parties, MAS star parties, like the BSIG weekends or Virgo Venture, which is also coming up next weekend, LLC weekends. These are all opportunities that we can share with others. So I think I just did I yes go. So the what are you drawn to seeing? These are obviously the basic elements, and it's sometimes really helpful to ask people, what do you like to see? Because that makes a big difference of when you want to see them. Obviously, if you like looking at the sun, it's going to be during the day, and there's going to be particular types of equipment that you're going to need. If you're looking at the moon, obviously you want to focus your attention at the terminator, wherever that happens to be. And that means then that obviously the moon is a shifting thing. M3 will always look like M3, but the moon looks different every single night, and especially when it comes to the terminator. So that's something we want to keep in mind. Planets, you want to make sure you be aware of what good seeing is, and how do we find out whether a night has good seeing. Deep sky objects, you want to make sure you're looking where there's no moon. And for some of us, we don't know what we wanted to experience, especially when we started out, and that's okay, because so many of us, as we've heard from the rest of you, you wind up getting favorites over the course of time. So many of you have shared with your gear, which is great. My biggest suggestion as we get ready to go into the observing season is take time to go through your gear. Make sure you understand what you have, understand your packages, how you pack the stuff up. Ask yourself the question, can you find the stuff in the dark? And put it all together, make sure it's working. I find that daytime frustration is way better than nighttime frustration. So it's always good to put your stuff together, make sure it's working ahead of time. And I think it was Fran that commented about not having a lot of gear. Any place that I go, I always make certain I pack a pair of binoculars and a beach chair, because sometimes especially if the skies aren't very good, or if there's a lot of clouds, or if I'm just tired, one of my favorite things to do is sit down with a pair of binoculars in a beach chair and just enjoy what's looking at. Obviously, we're all aware, because I think we're all members of MAS, that the MAS has loaner scopes, and that's a great way to make a determination of if I need something else, if I want something else, because I want to look at globular clusters, for example. Do I need better equipment, or will better equipment help me? And being able to use somebody else's gear is a great way to go. And so this is a question that has been kind of touched on by a few. And the question is, are we looking at stuff, or are we looking for stuff? And this is a question that sometimes helps us. If we know what we like to do, this will help us not only determine whether or not we want to get different gear, but what do we want to do in the night sky? And the question being, do we want to find stuff? Do we want to know the night sky? Do we want to learn the night sky? Or do we just want to look at whatever? And clearly 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there really wasn't a choice. If you wanted to buy gear, none of it was necessarily electronic. And so you had to learn the night sky. Today, you can look at a lot of things and not have any idea where anything is. And the question becomes learning star hopping or just simply purchasing go-to stuff. And my encouragement with everybody is to learn the night sky. And that's how we learn how to find treasures. And I think there's something about when I look for something and I find it, it's like it's like a treasure that I've gained, as opposed to just hitting the right buttons and then looking into the eyepiece or setting up the camera or whatever. The question becomes whether or not have I really gained that. And I'm sure it's quite different when it comes to imaging, because then it becomes the whole issue of the time spent in processing the data that you've developed, and that is in so many ways a treasure hunt in and of itself. So that question is
Jerry,
worth doing.
are you gonna mention sketching at all? Because I know you do that quite a bit.
Sketching is certainly, I think sketching in many ways is another level, because it is a decision to see more. So if a person wants to see more, they want to enjoy a particular galaxy or a particular star cluster, and they want to look at it, they want to see more than there. The best way to do that is to sketch it, because that requires us to slow down. It requires us to use our eyes in a different way. It requires us to look at quadrants in what we're looking at. And the issue isn't making a beautiful sketch. The issue is, do I see what's there? We tend to forget that it takes our brain a long time to make a mental image. I remember reading somewhere that it takes 7 minutes of staring at something consistently to develop an image such that when you walked away from that you can pull that mental image up into your mind and you can remember that. That's an enormous amount of time, but it's just an interesting way of thinking. So that's where the sketching comes in. It's not so much to make pretty pictures, although some people can do that, and that's wonderful. But it's more of an issue of what's there, and am I seeing what's really there? And that's where sketching really comes into play, in my opinion. Other stuff when it comes to the hows, good star charts. Sky and Telescope Pocket Sky Atlas is a great star chart. Object in the Heavens is a wonderful hybrid of atlas and observing lists, and everybody has favorites. Mine happens to be one called Interstellarium Deep Sky Atlas. It's a wonderful atlas. And of course, we all love the ubiquitous Sky Safari, and there's nothing that compares to it, which is really delightful. Here's an example of the Sky and Telescope Pocket Sky Atlas. Here's the constellation of, can I get there? It is. This constellation of Sagittarius down here. This one happens to get a pretty wide open area, and so there's a lot of stuff to see. There are other ones like this was the Interstellarum, whereas here is the constellation of Sagittarius, and you can see where the pages are a much smaller area of the sky rather than the other one. So that's a wonderful thing about sky atlases, is that lots of different ways of looking at them. These two are really great sky atlases. They're colorized, but their colors can be seen under red light, which is pretty necessary to protect our night vision. Because those of you have done so much, as we all know, a good table is pretty indispensable. Reference books are super helpful. Here are some of my favorite reference books. I find that Discover the Moon, as far as the moon is concerned, is one of the best reference books out there. Not only does it show you some very interesting things, but it shows you why they're interesting. And it's tremendously beneficial for if you're doing the second level of the Astronomical League lunar list. For the sun, the AL manuals are great. The Arsenal Heinz Star Cluster book is wonderful for star clusters. I love Sue French's Deep Sky Wonders book, and there are just so many. I have to say though, probably the Night Sky Observer's Guides by Keppel and Sander are probably my most used books as far as information about what a particular constellation provides. And there are so many others, and that brings up a point. There are two ways of looking at what we want to observe, and that is bouncing all over the sky. I want to look at star clusters all over, or do I want to focus on a particular constellation? Sometimes it's really helpful to focus on a particular constellation and look at whatever you can see in that constellation. And that's where some of these books like Night Sky Observer's Guide really helps a great deal, as do some of the lists. So when it comes to lists, in my opinion, the value of a list is it makes us think about what we're doing. The best list, the best is when you know what you want to look at. I want to look at globular clusters, for example, but I really don't know where they are. Lists will help you find those in those particular constellations. But a list can also just be sitting down before you go out and saying, well, what do I want to look at? And then you use Sky Safari or you use whatever, and you make a list of things you want to look at, helping to organize what you want to do and what you want to see. And there are lists everywhere for just about everything. Obviously AL, which I'll share some of with you, but there are just really are lists everywhere. Here are some of the Astronomical League projects that are typically for beginners. The sun has, there were two, Sunspotter and Hydrogen Alpha. Both are really doable. Of course, you need particular gear to do either one of those. Obviously, you need a Hydrogen Alpha telescope to do Hydrogen Alpha, and you need a decent solar filter for the Sunspotter. The moon, there are 3 of them. Lunar 1 is pretty easy, 100 objects, which are fairly findable. Lunar 2 is a little harder, and lunar evolution is all about how the moon evolved, how the geology of the moon evolved over the course of time.
Jerry, for these moon ones, is it an 8-inch the right scope? Is it a 4-inch? How would you describe it?
You can use a fairly small scope to do the lunar one. You could use a 4-inch. You can use, actually, much of it can be done with binoculars. In fact, there are 3 different levels to that project. There's a naked eye, there's a binocular, and there's a telescope, and you can move back and forth between those 3. So you could do that one with a 4-inch pretty easily. You could do that with like an astro blast, that sort of thing. Lunar 2 requires a little more magnification. An 8-inch would suffice for Lunar 2. The trick to Lunar 2 is the terminator. Oftentimes you need to look at particular things at particular times, because it's the terminator that determines where the shadow will lie, or those 2 are kind of synonymous. And that makes all the difference in finding things in the Lunar 2. The lunar evolution is kind of a mishmash of the 2. There are some things that are a little more difficult to see, and there are things that are fairly easy to see. The point there is that you then need to figure out what particular epoch, what lunar epoch, a particular element on the surface of the moon came from. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
All of these, all of the Galileo, all of the planet ones, you know, you could do all of this with an 8-inch without any problem whatsoever. Constellation Hunter is a naked eye one. Asterism observing you can do with an 8-inch. Carbon stars, fairly easy to find. Stellar evolution, easy to find, enjoyable to do. Solar neighborhood, easy to do. All of these are the question in all of these is, what do you want to look at, and how organized do you want to be in what you're doing? The lists do help you do that. One of the cool things about the lists, the AL lists, is that not only are they just there, I mean, you can pull them off the website and use the lists, so they're of value in and of that, just in that sense, they have great value. But then if you complete the project, which obviously isn't necessary to use the list, but if you complete the project, then there's a level of an incentive of completion, certification, and the bling. And here's some 3 examples of the bling. And many of the the pins are really quite lovely. Here's a list of beginning of what would be considered beginning observing projects, and many of them were on that past list. And each one of these has a list of things to look at, and oftentimes some sort of expectations of either logging, of some of them are sketching, some of them are merely writing down an example of something that you need to put down. Here's some intermediate projects, and the Astronomical League has so many, and more of them are being added all yearly. They have an additional ones. Some of these I've done, most of these I've done. Some of these I haven't. I've never done the occultation project or the radio astronomy project, but every one of them on the website gives a very clear indication of how to do these. So as you look through this list, anybody have any questions about any of them?
Would you recommend anything for astrophysics?
Astrophysics, radio astronomy, occultation,
Spectroscopy.
spectroscopy, absolutely. That would be considered a little tougher, partly because, well, of course, you're asking for astrophysics, you've got the knowledge, and then there's some gear that you need to purchase. Analemma observing, although it's not necessarily astrophysics, but it certainly charts the position of the sun during the course of an entire year. That's a great question. Let's see what the other list has. There are some lists that are specifically that are not necessarily observational. The one like astronomy before the telescope talks is more historical. The Galileo programs are more acknowledging what Galileo did with what he had. So you're redoing his observations. And while that's not necessarily astrophysics, it certainly has to do with the development of astrophysics. NASA always has special challenge programs. I'll go back to the advanced ones, and as I just kind of run through here, any questions on any of these? Any that
So Jerry, a lot of our members live in the city, right? And they may not have the most gear, at least not yet. What would you recommend? I mean, is there a starter list that you kind of recommend to people that they go after to learn stuff?
To learn stuff? Well, so the screen I have up right now are AL lists that are best for light polluted skies. So as you look through this, most of these are solar system oriented, which makes sense because really we can see a lot of the solar system stuff even in a light polluted situation. The hardest things to see in light pollution are deep sky objects. Planets punch through, obviously the moon and the sun punch through. Carbon stars are often seen a little bit better in light polluted skies because you can see the color a little bit better because your eyes aren't as dark adapted. I'm not sure that answers your question, Suresh. If anyone asks me what would be the first couple of projects, I would first ask them what are they interested in looking at, and the second would be what kind of gear do you have? If someone is interested in deep sky objects, obviously the first one is the Messier project. If someone is interested in just stars, the Double Star project, or the Carbon Star project, or the Stellar Revolution project. So there are a number of them that aren't difficult and can be done in relatively light polluted skies. And you begin to get a sense of what's out there, of what you can see. Henry, any other questions on some of these?
So the one that says Southern Skies, is that referring which latitude would you have to be at to?
Southern skies? Oh, that's a good
Yeah.
call. I would have to look that up specifically, but I would
Yeah.
guess that you need to be probably in the southern uh in Mexico.
Yeah, okay. I wondered. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
there are some things you can see. There are some of these things you can see from southern Texas, but like southern sky would include the large and small Mesoatlantic clouds, and you really can't see those until you get really well until you get into South America.
Thank you.
So yeah, so it's quite specifically the southern skies rather than equilateral skies or equatorial skies. There we go. That's the word.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, in summary, as far as lists are concerned, and I guess this would be true for anybody that wants, in my opinion, that wants to go out and do some observing. Lists will help you organize your observing as opposed to saying, gee, it's a nice night outside. I really should go out and observe. Oh, I really don't. I can look at the same things I looked at last week. Oh, there's this old television program on. I guess I'll watch that instead. If you are organizing your observing and you have a list, you're going to be more motivated to go out and to check those things off that list. It also helps you see stuff that you've never seen before. There are galaxies in particular and all sorts of nebulae that I would have never seen before if I hadn't worked through some of these lists. And star clusters. And star clusters in particular can be so individual in just how they look and how we can perceive them, asterisms you see inside of them, all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing that there are so many things I would never have seen if I hadn't been going through a list. It really does give you a sense of accomplishment, especially if you do the project. And I find that it really stretches my observing muscles when I need to observe something I've never seen before. Probably one of the projects that stretched my observing muscles was the multiple star list, where I was faced with a set of five gravitationally bound stars, and the object was to find out what's the primary and where are the other ones? And I had to determine position angle, and I had to determine distance, and it was kind of like a treasure hunt. It was like a mystery, solving a mystery. I found that much more enjoyable than I expected, and I really felt that I became a much better observer through that project. And it also gives you a sense of well-roundedness as opposed to not only just looking at galaxies, but there's a lot of other things out there to look at. But most important is, what do you want to observe? What really is on your heart what do you like? What do you like to observe? So in summary, I think observing can be as simple as sticking your head out the door at night and going, "Hey, yeah, there's the Milky Way, or there's the Big Dipper, there's Cassiopeia," and then just enjoying that. And it can be as rich and fulfilling and as complicated as you desire. So with that, get out there and observe.
This is great, Jerry. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah,
What
thank
other
you very
questions
much.
are people, Jerry? So what kind of programs are people interested in?
I will stop sharing here.
I'm thinking somebody like Fran who doesn't have a telescope. Fran, are there any programs you'd be interested in? Do we lose Fran? Oh, there she is.
I'm not sure. You know, I really, I guess it might be interesting to start working off some of the lists and especially the light polluted areas, because often I am at home, you know, unless I'm in some remote place on a kayak trip, in which case I'm not going to be taking gear anyway. So some of the real basic stuff, the idea of lists, and I'm looking at the stuff about some of the moon observation stuff and the planets. Yeah, yeah, but I'm kind of not sure. I mean, I like to go on some of the trips that I've gone on with you, and had opportunities to see stuff through people's much better equipment. But I also just appreciate being out there and looking at the sky.
Do you have a pair of binoculars, friend?
I do. And I take them on they may not be the best pair. They're waterproof because I take them on kayak trips.
Good thing. What
And
size are they?
Well, and now that you ask me, I can't even remember.
7 by 35? 10 by
I
50?
think 10 by 50.
10 by 50? Yep.
Yeah.
10 by 50 is a fabulous size for astronomy. 7 by 50 are almost as good. They're great for young eyes, but 10 by 50 is better for older eyes, just because our eyes don't open up as wide anymore. And the exit pupil of a 7 by 50 is pretty large. The reason why I bring that up is that there are lots of binocular projects. There's the first one I'd suggest would be the Messier binocular project. Many of those you can see from polluted skies, many of them. And the beauty of that project is, since there's really no such thing as a go-to pair of binoculars, you need to start. It naturally helps to develop the concept of what's up there. What are the constellations? And it's amazing what you can find with binoculars, and it's really fun to be able to, looking for something, and it's between these two stars, and you're moving, and bam, there it is. It's like, oh wow, there it is. I found it. Another thing would be the Northern Constellation Hunter, where you just simply sketch the constellations. And on one hand, you think, well, that seems pretty simple, and it is. But again, sketching, you really begin to see more than you thought you did, or than you saw before. And so sketching constellations really helps you know the constellations better. And then when you pull out a pair of binoculars, you go, oh yeah, I know that constellation. I sketched that one. I know what stuff's there. Some food for thought.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, I have general knowledge of the more well-known constellations, and I also spent a month in New Zealand some years back.
Wow.
And it was mostly a kayak trip,
Jealous.
but I got to go to Mount John's Observatory, where they look for exoplanets,
Nice.
which was pretty cool. And I got some familiarity with some of the southern constellations and how you find north without a North Star, and
Yep.
some of that stuff, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm jealous. It's great. Yeah. So worth thinking about anyway. And that I guess is one of the good things about astronomy, in the sense that it can be as simple or as complicated as a person wants it to be. And the Astronomical League lists as well, because they can be as simple or complicated as you want. You can get the list for the binocular Messier, and it'll encourage you to find 10. And you found 10. Well, that's 10 you didn't know before. You may not.
Yeah.
You may not do all 50. You may not complete the project and get a certificate and get a pin, which is cool. But that's not the point. The point is to find stuff you never found before, and that's true with all this stuff. It's true with any project or any list. Is let's find something I've never seen before.
Yeah, it's really cool, Jerry. Like when I started in the 80s, we had, I think, the Messier list, the Herschel 400, maybe one or two other lists. So people kind of finished the Messier list, and that was kind of as far as they got. But now it seems like, how many lists did you say are out there?
Well, there are probably 70.
It's crazy. So, like you said, there's a project for everybody if they so desire. you know, the easier projects, the intermediate or the harder ones, with binoculars, without, with a telescope, with a big telescope. It really depends on what you want to do, right?
It really does. And there are projects, if you have a 24-inch Dobsonian, there are projects that you can use with your 24-inch Dobsonian. There are lists of things to see that you will see better with a 24-inch Dob. And if you've got a 12-inch Dob, there are things that becomes the sweet spot. On every single one of the websites for the AL lists on the AL website, it gives you recommended sizes of telescopes. So you could go through each one of the projects, and you can just see, well, will my telescope work? And there may even be a well, there used to be, I'm not sure if they printed anymore, but there used to be a spreadsheet that kind of helps list that out. So it really is, it's an issue of what do you want to do?
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Jerry? Anybody else have any lists that they're looking at trying? Any nice pins people want to try to get?
That's right. I mean, you know, you do it long enough, and I mean, you get all these. These are all
Like an army general, like the army general,
or a Boy Scout or something like that. I mean, but I mean that's kind of cool. I mean, I don't know how many projects I've done, 25, something like that. I'm working on my gold, which requires 30, and so I'm about halfway there. And I'm not sure.
And in our club, we have several master observers, and even within that, there's several levels of master observers, right?
Yes, actually, we have some of the we have a large club, but we have some of the largest number of master observers in the country, which is pretty cool. And
Cool.
And a number of years ago, they decided there was a time when master observer was as far as you could go, and about 10 or 15 years ago, no, 7 years ago, the AL decided to make a tiered system, and so they've provided opportunities. So yeah, you can. There's a platinum level if you really want to get that far. That's 40 projects.
And we have one guy as a platinum level guy, right?
We don't. Nope. We have Dave Tosterson is a gold. He's our only gold. We've got three silvers, a number of advanced observers, and a bunch of master observers.
So Jerry, just for the people that don't know, to get the master level, what do you have to do?
So the projects, if a person is interested in doing this, you can go onto the website, on the AL website, and there is a link of the master observer sequence, and it's broken up into sets of 5. So there are particular 5 set of projects you do to get what's called an observer award, and then you do another set of 5, and then you become a master observer, and then you do another set, become an advanced observer, and another 5 set and become a silver. 10 become a gold, and 10 more to become a platinum. And so they're all laid out. And obviously the observer award, the projects for the observer are some of the easier ones: Double Star, Messier. I think the lunar one is in there. So those sorts of things. Ones that are pretty straightforward and easy.
I think you've got to do the Herschel 400 is when you have to do, right?
The Herschel 400 you need to do for the master observer.
Yeah.
Which is that kind of is the one that separates the proverbial men from the proverbial boys, just because there's 400 of them you have to find.
400 of them. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, all that information can be found on the website.
Mm-hmm.
I was working at the Bell Museum last Saturday as a Bell ambassador.
Good for you.
And one of the women who was involved with the Bell, she had a lanyard around her neck with a bunch of pins on it, and she said she got that idea from the Minnesota Astronomical Society people.
That's great. Well,
people like the Trotskys.
I can't take credit for being the first one to think about it. It was Anton Gregory, who was the very first one to start putting pins on his lanyard. Now that's a good idea. I'm going to do that too. So
Cool.
it's pretty funny.
All right. Anything else for people? Any other questions? Jerry, this was awesome. So in case you didn't know, this is being recorded. So in a few days, it'll be posted to our MAS YouTube channel. I'll send the link out when we have it. Again, the next Minnesota Astronomical Society beginner group event is next Saturday, weather permitting, back at Metcalf Field. We're finally back outside again. It'll start about 7 o'clock. I'm going to send out some communications about that shortly, and hope to see you there.
Great. Thanks for organizing this, Suresh. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for doing it, Jerry. All right, guys, take care.
Dave,
Thank you.
bye.